Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's a good topic because, well, obviously, but I think it's one that does highlight some differences, and they're important to speak to, and people can make their decisions. But I want to be clear about what the differences are and also what they aren't, at least for me. Um, it's actually less for me about substance. Uh, in other words, are the underlying problems real problems? And more about transparency and process. So I think taxes are high in Vermont. I think population trends have been going down. I think that consolidation is likely to create savings. Those are things that not everyone that I often speak with about these issues agree with. And so I'm not substantively as far down the spectrum as I think some folks may think. For me, the issue is transparency of the process, feeling enfranchised, feeling heard, but in a real way, not just saying that, but coming up with compromises that actually incorporate feedback from people in a way that they then feel they've really been part of this process. And Peter brought up MUMS, and I don't want to be too stark here, but I see the MUMS issue as really different than the way Peter described it. I've talked to a bunch of people, teachers and others who've been involved, and I don't think they see it the way that it was described. There were 33 teachers that signed a letter that was read publicly at a board meeting in March that opposed, and this is teachers, not community members, opposed the change. Folks who were working on it went back, came up with version 3.0, which was described in October. Somebody on the board asked the question, how do teachers feel about it? And the principal at the time said, well, they haven't really had a time to weigh in because of COVID, which is understandable, but it means that we don't actually know how teachers really feel about it. We've heard what the superintendent has said, but I've reached out to teachers. As I said, I reach out to people to get their voices and their feedback on issues, even if it goes against what's being said. And I have reached out to multiple teachers who will not talk to me about this issue because they're too uncomfortable about it. I don't think that we're in a place where people, including who are really important stakeholders in this process, actually feel heard. There's a lot of concern about the loss of the teams model, which is essentially breaking down MUMS into smaller groups. There's a lot of concern about going to 49-minute classes. There's a lot of concern about the waterfall schedule. There are a lot of concerns about the transition, and it's not just bringing sixth grade. A lot of folks don't realize that in bringing sixth grade to MUMS, it requires completely revamping the operational model of all grades at that school. And so my experience with the board up to now is that it's all been described as hunky-dory, and it's not. And that's important for people to understand and for there to be some reality around that. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't make the change, but it's how you get there. You don't want to be in a situation where teachers won't talk to you about it because they're too afraid. That's not where we want to be as a district. And I think we have similar issues around consolidation, and people feel unheard and disenfranchised. And I want to say that I've been involved in meetings that have not been like that have gone differently. There was a letter many of you might be familiar with back in last January, that came out in Middlebury. It was pretty harsh on this issue. And instead of saying, okay, well, here's my retort, I knew the three authors of the letter personally. I went and had lunch with one of them, who was, maybe the most vocal. We sat down. I said, I'd like to have a meeting with folks from Middlebury and the small towns, so that we can actually get together and kind of take a breath and figure out what we can maybe agree on. And we did that, and it was a really positive meeting. And then not too long after COVID hit, and we didn't, the world got turned upside down. But that's the kind of process I think everybody on all sides of the issue came out of that meeting feeling like this is doable. We can take this on, but we can take it on in a different way than is being done right now. And it'll make everybody feel better about it. And that's where I think we need to go.
Thank you, Chris. Lindsay.